All right, so who of you have not heard anything about the festivals, the Moedim? Any teaching on that before? So there's some new people here. So I'll try to lay some foundation as well, so it's not a cliffhanger for you. I am going to use visuals to try and make it a bit more easier. So Ben, I'll call you up in about 5 minutes so you can come and show us the visuals. So the feast we are going to discuss tonight is actually happening next week. And it's called Yom Teruah. Some might know it as Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the year. Rosh is the head, the start of a new cycle. So Yom Teruah is the starting of a new cycle, specifically a new month, because Yom Teruah starts the first day of the 7th month as well. And the 7th month is where all the fall festivals are found. So the spring festivals happen around March, April, and there are three festivals there. It's Passover, Unleavened bread, and Firstfruits. And then you count from Firstfruits to get to Shavuot, which is the 5th festival. And then you get the first one after that, which is now Yom Teruah. Now after Yom Teruah we get Yom Kippur, which is Day of Atonement, and then we get Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles. And in between Tabernacles and Passover we get Hanukkah and Purim, and then we get Passover again. So I've got a teaching on Purim that just link everything together as one big cycle, which I did last year. So you're welcome to have a listen to that. So just as the introduction, there are 7 main festivals. They are not Jewish festivals. They are festivals of the Lord or festivals of Yahweh. It's His festivals. Now a Moedim, that's the word for festival, is also called an appointed time. Now appointed time is where someone has an appointment with someone else. So in this case, the Creator set aside appointments where He have appointments with humanity. And He came physically down to meet those appointments. And that was the first coming of Messiah, which was during the time frame of Passover, Unleavened bread, and Firstfruits, where He came physically and fulfilled all the symbolism of those first festivals in His own flesh. So He fulfilled those and He made those appointments. Now in the same breath, the last 3 festivals are appointments that are not yet being made by Yahweh Himself. They are still to be fulfilled. So that's why we, as the bride, as the church, await the first of these festivals to be fulfilled. And Yom Teruah is the first of the last of the 7 festivals. So that's why tonight is very significant, because we are awaiting this new cycle, which is called the fall festivals, to start that process, where the work of the Messiah will be completed during His second coming. So it's all about end time frames, and that's why this feast is significant. We also see that the blowing of trumpets, the feast gets its name from the word Yom Teruah. The Yom is day, and Teruah means the blowing of the trumpet. That's how it's translated. So, or making a sound or to shout. It's also translated as Jubilee, and that means to be set free during those times. So it's all about having the significance of the symbolism of this feast that will come into play during the fall festivals and the second coming of Messiah. So the blowing of the trumpet, Teruah, is the main theme for what we want to discuss tonight. Now there's 3 verses in Leviticus, and that gives us a significance of what the meaning of blowing is. Now the first one is in Numbers 10 verse 1 to 7, and that's where the silver trumpet was blown to call the congregation together, and it was also blown to give direction to people when they need to start back up and then move to the next location. So the blowing of the trumpet is to give direction and to gather the people. And that's why this feast is so significant, where people will come together into unity, awaiting the second coming of Messiah. People that are like-minded, and also new people who want to join us. I grew up in a normal Christian church. I never knew about the festivals. It was not important to me. I didn't know anything about it. But since I discovered this, I discovered the significance of the festivals because of the fact that the last three are not yet fulfilled. So they must be important for the church today. Why is it important? The blowing of the trumpet also reveals and bring confusion amongst the enemy. So there is the enemy coming. Now if you read Matthew 24 and you read the sequence, it first reveals the anti-Messiah and then the real Messiah will come. So the anti-Messiah will precede the real Messiah. So if the real Messiah come, he will come in sync with his appointed times to come and do the work described in each of those themes. The anti-Messiah will not fulfill the Moedim of Yahweh. So if someone says, I'm the Messiah, go to the desert as the New Testament says, do not believe him if he's not confirming the Moedim of Yahweh, because he is not the real one. So the festivals are there to filter out false messiahs and the real Messiah. So that's why they are important to us, the church today, because we will be deceived by messiahs doing signs and wonders, and people will go astray following the wrong one. And that great falling away has been predicted in the New Testament as well, so we need to take heed. The second verse where it's found is in Numbers 10 verse 9, where it says that it's during a time of war, you sound the alarm, and then you get Yahweh's attention. Now this one is very important. Now when you get Yahweh's attention, he's Yahweh Tzevaot, the God of the armies of the heavenlies, and he and his armies will come down and fight the battle on your behalf. You don't have to fight. It's the same principle that I saw in Jericho, which is the third verse, which is in Joshua 6 verse 5. When they sound the trumpets, the walls came tumbling down. So when you blow the shofar like we did tonight, we get Yahweh's attention and his armies are available for us to come and fight on our behalf. And the strongholds of these cities, of the structures of the religious systems, will come crumbling down. Now back in the day, Jericho was the first city to take in, and Yahweh did it on their behalf with the sounding of the trumpet. Now a similar city exists today in the end time context, and that's the city described in Revelation, which is Babylon, that will be destroyed by Yahweh and his host of armies on your behalf. All we have to do is to sound the trumpet and get his attention and come and fight on our behalf. So no stronghold will stand and no enemy will overcome us if we are obedient, fulfilling the symbolism of this festival in our midst. So it's very important for us to know the significance of blowing of the trumpet. It's not just to entertain ourselves because it's a nice thing to do, because the Jews does it. It is significant spiritually. The last thing is that you confuse the enemy. There's numerous stories in the Old Testament where the enemies turn against each other when the sound of the trumpet was blown. So he came and he caused the enemies to destroy themselves by the sounding of the trumpet. Now lastly, what's significant for us as well is the usage of the trumpet in the book of Revelation. That's the end time prophecy. So that is definitely New Testament. Any prophecy, you can see into New Testament passage as well. And there it refers to the blowing of 7 trumpets. Now the number 7 is a very interesting number. 7 is the word Sheba. And Sheba comes from the root word Shabbat, that means oath or covenant. It also means to be satisfied, to be made full, and abundance. So we see that when you are in sync with the number 7, which is the Sabbath, which is the 7 festivals, and which is specifically Yom Teruah, you will be satisfied, have abundance, because you are covenant people. Because it's only his covenant people who obey the covenant and the word of the covenant by sounding the shofar on Yom Teruah. Those who are not covenant people do not do these things. And those who are covenant people who do not know, we need to tell them and make them aware of this mighty spiritual weapon that they can use as part of being covenant people. Now, on the flip side of that, which astonished me, that the word Shabbat also means to curse. Now, the number 7 has got a negative meaning connected to it. So if you do not do the positive things related to that word, you will bear the consequences of the negative meaning, which is you're going to get the curse. So people who are disobedient, not following and obey the commandments regarding the Moedim, specifically around the number 7, which is the Sabbath and festivals, and specifically in blowing of the shofar, you might be exposed to the plague or the curse that's coming. And that's evident in the book of Revelation, where the 7 plagues were sequenced into the blowing of the 7 sequential trumpets. So that's just a bit of an introductory on Yom Teruah. So Ben, if you can come up. Well, in the notes, if you're interested, I can mail it to you. I've got a bit more detailed picture. Now, I always use the symbol, which I believe is the symbol of our faith. The cross is not a symbol of our faith. The menorah is. Not that the cross is not significant, but the menorah is the most significant symbol, because the menorah pattern is the tool where we can hang truth on. Now, the beauty of truth is you need to have more than one witness. That means that your truth needs to be in balance for the truth to stand. If you only hang one truth on the menorah, it will fall over. So you need the balanced truth for the truth to stand on its own feet. So I don't need to defend my faith. I just present the truth in this format, and it will stand on its own feet. And Yahweh will defend His own word with His own means. So the menorah pattern is the tool where you can hang anything onto it, to hang truth on it, and then you can analyze these truths in relation to one another. Now, first of all, just want to turn it this way. Sorry, Ben. So this is upright. So the menorah pattern, you will see that the middle branch is branch number 4, which is the main branch on which all the other branches hang from. So this is the most important branch, and all the other branches support that main function. Now, what we find in the number 4 branch, if we hang the 7 festivals on it, is that Shavuot is in the middle. So the Shavuot festival is the most important feast of all 7. And everything leads to Shavuot. Yes, please.
Where is the menorah found? But in the scripture?
In the tabernacle. Leviticus, I think, 20. Yeah, it's an Old Testament. It's a pattern that you found within the holy place, where the menorah is opposite the showbread, and the menorah is the only light inside the holy place, and that's the source of light. And we know that truth equals light as well, that shine upon the showbread, which is a symbol of His word. So it's only the menorah pattern that can reveal the truth of the showbread, or the word of Yahweh, inside the holy place, because it's the only source of light. And the menorah pattern is also found in Isaiah 11 verse 2, where it talks about the 7 attributes of the Spirit of Yahweh, which is the progressive steps of what the Spirit takes you through in order to reach the middle one, which is Yahweh. And that is basically taking you through that sequence. Now, I'm not going to go into that. That's something that happens in the holy place, in your personal relationship with Him. So Shavuot is the middle branch, most important, and all the other festivals support this one. Now, Kathy wants me to bring Yom Teruah in context with the covenant. Now, the only way I can connect Yom Teruah with the covenant is through this pattern, because Shavuot represents the covenant, because we had the 2 tablets of stone, and then on Pentecost it was fulfilled by the outpouring of the Spirit. So that is where you get the essence of the work of Messiah that was allowed. So Ben, if you can turn it this way again. So taking you through the sequence, the first 2 festivals is Passover and unleavened bread. Now, amongst the first 3, unleavened bread is the most important one. If you make a little menorah pattern there, number 2 is in the middle. In the same way, if you look at that one, Yom Kippur is the most important one, and those 2 support that one. Now, unleavened bread is where sin is taken away. So how is sin taken away from me? The only way if sin is taken away is if I get a new nature, that I do not want to sin anymore. And if I sin, I've got the urge to repent. And that work is only happening by the receiving of the Spirit that will change the fallen nature, which is one of the problems Yahweh had to solve. The first one was when man sinned, he had to remove them from his presence because he's holy. He's a consuming fire. And if you stand in a sinful state in front of him, you will be devoured. So he had to remove them from his presence, not because he's evil, because he's holy and he cares for you. Out of his grace, he hid himself from you because of your sinful state. And then he saw that he needed to now elevate you back to a holy state so you can be presented back into his presence. And that last step will happen at Sukkot. So that is the purpose of the 7 festivals, is to bring you back into the presence of Yahweh, as given to Abraham in Genesis 15 verse 1, where he said, Abraham, I am your exceedingly great reward. You get me. You don't get streets of gold. You don't get a car. You don't get money. You get me. I am your reward. Number one motive for serving him is to get him. To be put back into his presence, face to face. That's my goal. I don't serve him to win his attention or to whatever. I serve him to be in a face-to-face relationship with him. That's my number one motive. And that's the motive of number 7. But before we could get to number 7, he had to deal with the sinful nature. So the Messiah had to come and do the work of the Messiah during his first coming, and he became the Passover lamb. And fulfilling that work, we now have access into the covenant. Now we can enter into the Shavuot attributes or benefits. Now what do I get if I enter Shavuot? I get the tablets and I get the Spirit. What does the Spirit do? Restore my nature. What does the tablets do? The tablets represent the Torah. Torah comes from the word Yara, that means direction. Direction is when you look at the map, I'm here, I need to get there. Where's the direction? Put on your GPS and he will guide you through. And there are road signs which are directions, which are actually Torah, to direct you right to the end where you find Yahweh. Because salvation is a place, a person, and a presence. It's not something that you have here. We are in the process of being saved. But once we walk and stand in front of him, then you can say, I am saved. Because that's the purpose of salvation. So the work of the Messiah give us the first key. And that key unlocks the door to access the covenant. Now in between the covenant and the first work of Messiah, we get first fruits. Now first fruits is described as a harvest feast. And there's a verse in Luke where Yeshua said, get 70 more and go 2 by 2 and go and tell everybody. So first fruits is about the harvest, which is the gospel message, which linked the work of the Messiah to the covenant. So what's the gospel message? It's to say that the Messiah has done the work so you can have the key to access the covenant. That's the true gospel message. And now I have access to his word and his Spirit that will do a work within me that will elevate my state of holiness so that I can be prepared to stand in front of him without being devoured by his holiness. And that's effectively what the judgment of the unjust is. Yeah. If they stand in front of them with sin inside of them, it's like darkness. And if you switch on light, it's a natural thing to displace darkness. It's not because Yahweh is angry, it's just because he's holy. Okay, so number 4 is what the covenant is. So how does Shavuot and Yom Teruah now link? The first thing is that Yom Teruah is the first festival that is not yet fulfilled. That's the next one connected to the sequence after Shavuot. But also on the Menorah Pattern, what you can do is you can link branches together. So I link number 5 and number 3 through the Menorah Pattern. So first fruits theme is still applicable during Yom Teruah. What's that theme? I need to preach the gospel message. There's a harvest. I need to tell people about this key so they can access that covenant. But not only that, there's a second key that will help you to cross over and stand before the King. So those are the 2 keys that I have. That's part of my gospel message during the time of Yom Teruah, which is at the end of the age. So the new message is no longer that the Messiah is there and he paid for your blood and you can now access the covenant. The new gospel message includes you need to be holy because He is holy. You need to prepare as the bride, receive His Spirit and work with His Spirit so He can renew your nature. You need to know where the directions are in the time traveling through the wilderness on the way to the promised land. Because without directions, you will get lost. And how do you get lost? If you take away the Torah, there's false teachers. They've got another GPS system. They direct you in another way. And they want to show you another destination, which is not the true one. So we need the active directions that come from the Scripture in order to filter out all the false teachings, the false prophets, and the false teachers. And that's warned by Yeshua and Paul in the New Testament. We need to be beware, because during the time of the end, which is the theme of Yom Teruah, there will be many false messiahs, many false teachers, many false prophets. Now, if you listen and you look at different messages on television regarding the gospel and preaching, and if someone does not use the right directions or the foundation of the Torah, they will be out of balance and might lead you to another destination. That's the problem. So the second key is coming with a warning. There are false prophets. You need to beware. So the next one is Yom Kippur. Now what I've done here, I've made two little lines there, because these are the only two feasts that has the word Yom connected to it. Yom is the word day, and that day specifically is repeated in end time context as the day of the Lord, or the day of Yahweh, or the day that is coming. So Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur makes the pathway, which is signifying the Jordan River, which is the last place to cross over before you can enter the promised land. So the Jordan means judgment. Judgment only means it's a gate. If you don't have a ticket, you can't go in and you'll be separated. So judgment is about separating the wheat from the chaff. And that's where the crossing over happens. Now when you read the story about crossing over, it talks about the Levites who carried the ark, and when their feet touched the Jordan, it opened up just like the Red Sea, and they walked through it on dry land. What was in the Ark of the Covenant? The directions, the tablets. So they carried the symbolism of the covenant, and it's the covenant people that will not be affected by judgment, or by the time of the tribulation, or the time of the end. They will walk through it, they will go through it, but through dry land, not being affected. And that's the message of the second key. If you do not want to be affected and cross over, you need to have contact with someone who's carrying the tablets, or be with someone who uses the Torah as a roadmap that will lead to the right destination where Yahweh is. So that's the key and the message for us now. Now the term crossover in Hebrew is called Ivri, and that's where the word Hebrew comes from. And Abraham was called the first Hebrew because Abraham crossed over. He crossed over from being a pagan in the world, serving idols. He heard the voice of Yahweh and he decided to believe and follow. So he acted on the truth he received. So that's the key of following in the footsteps of Father Abraham. Whatever truth you receive, actively walk in it. If you receive more truth, implement it and start actively walking it. So as you get more directions, you will start to walk in holiness. As you walk in holiness, your righteousness level will increase as well, and you will be in a state where you can actually be reunited back into the presence of Yahweh. And lastly, Sukkot represents the kingdom, the New Jerusalem, and also the Garden of Eden state. Because everything happened in the garden. Where sin came, man was removed from the garden. The garden was the place where the presence of Yahweh was. We need to come back into the presence. So Sukkot, or tabernacling with Yahweh, is basically to walk back through the door into the Garden of Eden and dwelling with Him. Yeah. So that is taking us back to the original things. So this is just a quick roadmap on connecting Yom Teruah with the covenant, the importance of the covenant. Everything is about the covenant. That's the second key, and the second key message has to do with the warning but you need the first key and the second key to cross over. So remember that some of our Christian brothers believe, I only need the first key. I only have to have faith. I don't have to do anything about that. That's legalism. No, it's your directions. You need to have directions. Because where the mountain was located, there was still a wilderness between you and the promised land. And in the wilderness, they traveled all around, didn't know where to go, unless they followed Moses. And Moses had the one with the directions. So you need to follow the one with the directions in order to find your way through the wilderness into the promised land. So that's just laying out the festivals and the importance of them. As I said, those have not been fulfilled. This one has been fulfilled by receiving the Spirit. The Spirit does not replace the Torah. The Spirit writes the Torah on your heart. What more evidence is there that the Spirit equals the Torah? And the Spirit is also called the Spirit of truth. The truth is the word of Yahweh. The Spirit can only reveal the word of Yahweh. There's no new revelation outside of the Torah. If someone tells you the Spirit give me a new revelation, they are not telling the truth. Because all the truth has been captured in the book. It's given to us. That's got this whole restoration plan. You need nothing more, no more revelation than this, than to meet him face to face. There's no new revelation that comes from his Spirit. If you say it comes from a Holy Spirit, it's not his Spirit. His Spirit will always refer back to the foundation, because that's where you build on. Yeah. So that's just a side comment on some false teachings that is evident. Now in the notes I've got a picture of the sequence up here. So that's just the 7 festivals again. PO is Passover, Unleavened Bread, Firstfruits, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur and Sukkot. But what I have here, I've got the moon phases. So what you will note here is Unleavened Bread and Sukkot has got full moons. Passover and Firstfruits got slightly, nearly 100% full moon. The one is just beyond full moon, the other one's just before full moon. And then Shavuot is a dark moon. And what's interesting about the dark moon and Shavuot is it's all about the covenant. And the verses that I found was the covenant made with Abraham. Yahweh put him in a deep sleep, and it says in that verse, and it was total darkness. The only way there's total darkness is if the sun is down and if it's a dark moon. Otherwise you would have said there's a moon there. So the covenant is cut in total darkness because that's where the total separation, the furthest away from Yahweh, which is total light or fullness of light, the furthest away from him is the absence of light. And that's where he decided to cut the covenant. In the furthest place removed from him to have the most effect to pull people from the furthest point away from him back to him. So that's why the symbolism of Shavuot is a dark moon. Now Yom Teruah is where you see the first light appearing. And that is where Rosh Chodesh, or the word Rosh Chodesh, comes in. And that means new moon or new month. Huh? Or renewed moon. Yeah, a new moon is not a new moon, it's new moon to you. It's the same moon in the new cycle, in a different time. In the same way, the new covenant is not a new covenant, it's the old covenant, it's new to you, because you just came into it. So, just a quick note on the covenant before I move on. Just going back to Abraham, where the covenant was cut, he was put in a deep sleep. Where else was someone put in a deep sleep?
Adam.
In the garden. Adam. In the separation of Adam into Adam and Chava, of Adam and Eve. Now I use the word Adam because that's the created man, which consisted of both. Because rib actually means side or half. Yahweh separated Chava from Adam, and if you put them back together again, then you get Adam. So for us to fulfill the restoration process, we can call ourselves Adam, because then we will be fully united. But the symbolism of Adam and Eve being separated, when you put them back together again, that process is called the marriage covenant. So that's also a covenant that's associated with a deep sleep, that's associated with darkness. So we can see that the covenant is linked to 2 men. The one is Adam, the one is Abraham. Now Adam was the first Adam, and there was a second Adam who came to fulfill what the first Adam failed. Because the first Adam, after he was separated, he's half sinned and he followed, so he sinned as well. So the symbolism of Adam and Eve is also found with the bride and the groom. It's the bride who sinned, and the groom who hasn't sinned yet is now reuniting with the bride. That's us marrying Yeshua, and together we become Adam. So Adam can only be when you are in him. So your fullness can only be achieved when you are in Messiah. Not on your own merits, not on your own account, because you don't have it to become into the fullness. You need that half that is still perfect. Be united with that, and that will make you a perfect human to stand before the Father. So that's just something I did when I did the study on salvation. So interestingly about the covenant, both times it was dark, and it's linked to Adam and Abraham. Now Abraham is where the covenant was made with man on his behalf, but it was made with Yahweh because Abraham was in a deep sleep, and Yahweh moved in between the pieces. So that means if anybody of the two parties break any of the requirements of the covenant, that person needs to die. And the only person who walked amongst the pieces was the pillar of light. So when man sinned now, the one who walked amongst the pieces had to die, and that's why Yeshua had to die, because of the flip side of that same covenant that is represented by Shavuot is the marriage covenant, and that's where we need to be prepared as the bride in order to be united back to Yahweh, but that can only happen through marrying the groom. There's no other way to be restored back into the presence other than marrying the Messiah. Now the symbolism of the Hebrew marriage, the first part, which is called the ketubah, which is the Mount Sinai experience, is the first part of the contract, and that's where the young man made an agreement with the father, and they agreed, and then the young man went away. He had 2 years to prepare a house, and within the 2 years he can come back. And when he come back, he blow the trumpet, and then he can gather his bride, and then they are legally married, and then they can go and live where he prepared the house. That's why Yeshua said, I have prepared many houses, and the translators mentions, but it's actually the symbolism of the Hebrew marriage that is depicted by these two festivals. The first part of the marriage, the second part of the marriage, and you need both in order to be reunited in the covenant marriage, which is the only way to be unified back to the Father or back to Yahweh. So that's just where the two covenants come in. Now lastly, I found this fascinating. I just stumbled upon this. I was looking at the word Chodesh because that's what Yom Teruah is. Because Yom Teruah is linked to the moon. The full moon means the fullness of revelation. That's a partially a revelation. That's the starting of the revelation. And that's the starting point. So what was that? So we see the fullness of revelation happen at Unleavened Bread, where Yeshua was sacrificed. So the fullness of Yahweh was revealed, just like with Zerah, Tamar's son, where he pushed out his hand to put a scarlet thread on, and he pulled back his hand. It was for a short duration of time where the fullness of Yahweh was revealed to mankind, and he said, when you want to see the Father, look at me. I look just like my Father. Because he revealed the fullness of the Father for a short period. So this is the fullness of Yahweh revealed for eternity. And this is what Sukkot represents. So that's the moon cycle and the revelation of the moon. But going back to Yom Teruah, Yom Teruah or Teruah is the word Rosh Chodesh, or the head of the month, or the starting of the new cycle of the moon. So first of all, it's the starting of a new cycle. When there's a new cycle, there's new things going to happen. Things are going to change. But there's going to be another end point or end result that will happen at the end of that cycle. So we've got a promise that we need to look forward to by the starting of the cycle. Now, Chodesh comes from the root word Chadash. Now, I always go back to the root word because that gives you the action of the word or the verb associated with that word. So, Chadash is similar to new moon and month, but it's only used 10 times in Scripture. So that pricked my mind when I saw that, because number 10 means fullness and completion. So that gives me a roadmap of 10 steps that need to happen to get to that point. So which are these steps? Now the first one is found in 1 Samuel 11 verse 14, where it talks about the renewing of the kingdom. Now that rings a bell when you know the New Testament. It says, repent for the kingdom is at hand. So that kingdom is the renewed kingdom where the Father will come and renew his kingdom on earth. And that's basically what the renewal of the kingdom is. It's the gospel message. And that's number one. Number two is the renewing of the altar. The renewing of the altar, it's the same altar, but you just have another sacrifice. So the altar is associated with the work of Messiah where animals were sacrificed, but this time the Lamb of God was sacrificed. And that's a renewing of the altar, which is number two, which is a link to the gospel message as well, which is key one. Number three is 2 Chronicles 24:4, where it talks about repair the house of Yahweh. And then in 2 Chronicles 24:12, it also repeats it and said, repair the house of Yahweh. So now I have two houses that need to be repaired. And the two houses you find in Ezekiel 37, which is the two sticks. Now Ephraim and Judah, and both houses are not up to scratch. Both need repair. And they will come together into one house, into one hand, which is King Messiah. And that's also the symbolism of the two silver trumpets that's been blown. Silver is the color of purification and holiness. And both need to become holy. And then both will come together. And the time frame is the time frame of Yom Teruah, which is the day of the Lord or the end times. Number 5 is Job 10 verse 17, which is renew your witnesses. Now the first witness or message is the gospel message. You are a witness and you speak forth the message. And the new message, or renewing the message, is the second key message, which got a warning as well as clarity that you need both. You need the Spirit and the directions of the Word. And that's also overlaid by what we see in Revelation, the two witnesses, which just put us in the time frame of the end times as well, linking that time sequence to that. The next one is in Psalm 51:10, which says, renew a right spirit in me. So that's about repentance and holiness. So I need to fix myself. I need to work on myself. I need to trust the Spirit. I need to read this roadmap. I need to see what I need to do in order to get the second key. Because this is not a passive faith. It's not something that I know that's a truth that I can bank on. You need to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's Paul's advice to us. So how do you work it out? It's physically do a workout. Like Moses symbolized for us when he had the battle with Amalek. He physically had to hold the staff above his hands, above his head, and Aaron and Hur had to support him in order to work out his faith so that the enemy can be defeated. So the enemy was Amalek, that's depicting the flesh. So you need to hold up the standard against the flesh so that your nature, with the help of the Spirit, can be renewed, so that your holiness level can come up to scratch, so you can be standing before Him without spot or wrinkle as a perfect bride, so you can be reunited in Messiah, standing before the Father without being devoured by His holiness. Number 7 is youth. The youth will have wings as eagles. So that's an interesting concept, because when Yeshua had disciples, He called fishermen, and they were fishers of men. So the fish are depicting the Gentiles, the sea and the ocean are the nations, and they had a boat where they fished from with nets. They didn't use a harpoon, the turn or burn message. They didn't use bait, the prosperity gospel. They just hang their lives to the side of the boat, and when you swim into their lives, they gently help them into the boat. Once they're in the boat, then you clean them. You don't sit on the boat and call them pagan fish, and you're a horrible pagan, you're that pagan. Now, once you help them into the boat, then you clean them. And you clean them with the help of the Spirit. You need to help them to receive the Spirit so that their nature can actually work with the Spirit to be renewed. And then you show them the directions or the guidelines or the foundation of what this cleaning process actually asks of you to do. And then they need to work out their salvation as well. But this verse says that you will have wings as eagles. Now, an eagle also catches fish, but not from a boat. And he can do it remotely anywhere in the sea. So we are more mobile. So this is a more mature level of fishing tactics than sitting in a boat. So you don't have to sit in a little church, people walk in the door, and you might stumble upon someone, make a friendship and help them. It's about physically going out into the world and catch them. It's a more progressive, aggressive way of fishing. And that's the theme of Yom Teruah, or the end time way of fishing. And where the wings of eagles is also linked to is also in Revelation 12, where the woman will receive wings. He will take her to a safe place, will be nourished. And the context is that the dragon wants to kill her child, newborn believers. He wants to deceive by the flood that will come out of his mouth. The flood water is the word, which is the message of the false teachers and false prophets targeting new believers, and he wants to devour them. So the woman will prepare them, or will protect them with the wings of eagles and with the knowledge of the second key message. Number 8 is renew the face of the earth. Now that one's easy. New heavens, new earth. So that just shows the time frame. So we're heading towards the end now, getting closer to the end point, which is Sukkot. Number 9 is repair the waste cities. So during the 1,000 years, everything is destroyed. Babylon is destroyed. Earthquakes, hail, fire flying down, fire comes from heaven. Everything is destroyed. But if you read Zechariah 14, it talks about people that will go up to Jerusalem. Satan will be released. Some will rebel with him and go to attack those in the city. And then fire will come down and devour them. So those cities that were destroyed will be renewed at the end. Because it said after that, people will go up to Jerusalem after the smoke cleared. And will go up year after year to celebrate the feast of Sukkot. And if they do not do that, it will not rain in their land. So there will be people outside the city, people inside the city. People inside the city are the bride who has married the groom, who are in the presence of the father. But there are those who are the guests at the wedding. They have not embraced the fullness. But because there's still grace, the new cycle starts. So after the 7,000 years, 8,000 year is also day one again, and the new cycle starts. In Hebrew, time is not linear, it's cyclical. But that's a more complex topic for later. So the last one, number 10, is renew the days of old. Now the old days also refer to the old ways. The old ways is you go back to the foundation, the Torah. That shows you the ancient path, the old way, how to travel on and give you the right direction to end up. And that implies that the old days and the old ways are renewed. That Sukkot, we will see the kingdom, the New Jerusalem, and the original Garden of Eden state reestablished. And also interesting here is that it refers to a renewed day. Now, day also signifies time or the calendar. So the original calendar will be restored. So we might ask ourselves, what calendar are we following? And is this calendar perfect? Every Passover, there's a battle of the calendars. Everybody want to kill one another because Passover is on full moon. No, it's on a half moon. No, it's this day. It's the Bali need to be Aviv. No, it's not. No, it's a sliver. No, it's dark moon. And then you get division. You know what? We're all wrong. We just try to do our best to do the right thing. So if your brother do it on another day, that's okay. At least he's trying. Don't call him pagan. Don't call him a hypocrite. He's just trying, and you're wrong as well because you live in Australia. Your time frame is totally off. Unless you live in Jerusalem and someone cited the moon from the Sanhedrin, you are wrong. So we're all wrong. Give the man a break. We all just want to do the right thing. But when the Messiah will teach Torah from the mountain, people will come and they will learn and they will know exactly how it works. The time will be perfect. There will be no time zones. Everything will be in sync, right from his mouth. No confusion anymore. Babylon, which is confusion, will be totally destroyed, and he will be king over all. So that's basically what I want to share with you tonight. Just to focus on, please don't call other people pagan, just because they're different. I also believe things where I can call myself a pagan, I can call myself a hypocrite, and I'm definitely wrong in something. I don't claim to know everything, but collectively we can find the truth. And the more we search, the closer we'll get to the ultimate truth, or the full moon concept. But the time frame of getting there is after the second coming. So we aspire to the fullness of truth, but we will never ever find it in this life, only in the life to come. So leave your and have mercy upon your fellow brethren on the Jewish side as well as on the Christian side. Just have a balanced truth and help one another to find the truth together in love. Amen.